I firmly believe someone out there knows something. Someone out there saw something, heard something. We need that person to call us.
Has there been any evidence so far that Nancy is still alive, or is it just hope of investigators and the family?
There's been no evidence that she's not.
Gloves found near Nancy Guthrie's home tested for DNA, and this morning there is no match. So what are investigators' next moves? Plus, could this all be a burglary gone wrong? The Pima County Sheriff speaking out on the many rumors regarding the investigation. And confessed hitman Henry Tenon heading to trial. He withdrew his guilty plea in the Microsoft executive murder trial. So what in the world is this new trial gonna look like now? We'll talk about it. And coming up, we have very emotional testimony from shooting survivors. We'll talk about how that might tip the scales of justice for the father of the alleged school shooter. It's all coming up next for you right here on Opening Statements. Good Wednesday morning to you, and welcome to Opening Statements. I'm Julie Grant. Are you ready for some coffee and some court? It's that time where we get you all warmed up and ready to go for the big day ahead on Court TV Live. So we'll kick it off as we always do. My friends, grab that cup of coffee right now. It's time for my opening statement. Justice for Jared. Murdered father of three, Jared Bridegan, deserves justice. This week is the 4-year anniversary of his death. This poor man was set up, he was followed, he was ambushed, and he was murdered. And until yesterday, it seemed like the case against his ex-wife, Shanna Gardner Fernandez, and her new husband, Mario Fernandez Saldana, was on track. Mainly because admitted hitman Henry Tenon pleaded guilty and agreed to testify against them. But on Tuesday, Tenon, who was Mario's tenant, withdrew his guilty plea. It's like a mulligan in golf. Last stroke doesn't count, last plea doesn't count. Tenon is going to trial. And this could mean more difficulties in prosecuting the other two, Mario and Shanna. My heart breaks for Jared Bridegan's lovely wife, Kirsten, and for all three of his children. His murder was allegedly over his custody battle with Shanna. But who's suffering the most now? Arguably, it's the kids. I hope and I pray that truth and justice prevail in this case, because this young, successful, loving father should be alive today. That's my opening statement. Let me know if you like it. Right now, time for your daily docket.
I remember Melody, she had blood all on her arm. I remember her blood was like getting on the side of me because I was like kind of like laying on the side of her.
In Georgia, testimony resumes at 8:30 a.m. Eastern in the murder trial for defendant Colin Gray. In Michigan, the state's case resumes in the hidden murder of Dee Warner trial for defendant Dale Warner. Court gets underway at 10:30 a.m. Eastern. And in Utah, defendant Tracy Grist has a status hearing this morning at 10:30 a.m. Eastern. She is connected to the murder of her son-in-law, Matthew Restelli. So that is the allegation with her. Her son, Kevin Ellis, you may recall, was recently convicted. Her daughter, Catherine, has pleaded guilty, and she is expected to fight this case, again, cloaked in the presumption of innocence. Right now, we turn to your top story this morning. New DNA developments emerging in the search for Nancy Guthrie. The glove that was found near the 84-year-old's home, resulting in no DNA match. The Pima County Sheriff's Department says, quote, the DNA that was submitted to CODIS, that's the FBI's system where criminals' DNA gets filed away. The DNA that was submitted to CODIS was from the set of gloves found 2 miles away. It did not trigger a match in the National CODIS database. It did not match DNA found at the property. The DNA found at the property is being analyzed, and further testing needs to be done as part of the investigation. Investigators are currently looking into additional investigative genetic genealogy options for DNA evidence to check for matches. Oh, that's interesting. That's interesting. We saw that used with the Golden State Killer, Joseph D'Angelo, That guy who was a police officer and got caught through genealogical DNA. Saw it in the Kohberger case. Remember? We knew it was the spawn of Papa Kohberger that was on that knife sheath through the genealogical DNA because of what was done in that trash pull, what they pulled out of the house. So we'll see if that's where things go next. Let's talk about how successful these efforts may be. Let's bring in private investigator Manuel Gomez and retired Lieutenant Mike Gould. Good morning to you both. So let's start with the idea that they're going to turn to genealogy in hopes of getting a match, that CODIS was unsuccessful. But here, Manuel, I'll start with you. What do you think the odds are that this perpetrator or perpetrators put their DNA into 23andMe, or one of their relatives put it into 23andMe or one of those sites? Is this the long shot?
I mean, it is a long shot, but I do believe it is something that could possibly solve this case. I believe they do have a good chance. As you stated before, Julie, in the Kohberger case and numerous other murder cases have been found and solved from familiar DNA. Okay, and so I believe this is going to be one of those catalysts that could make this case move forward. And I look forward to seeing this result, because I got to tell you, Julie, you know, the stuff that's going on the internet and all the false information out there needs to stop. And I'm hoping the FBI brings an end to that with this new genealogy DNA.
Yeah, the sheriff addressed that too, Manuel. Let's take a listen to more of what he said.
I have been a cop for 50 years. I'm not a good politician. I suck at it. But I am a good cop. And one thing I know is if you attack a victim, I'm going to step in and say something. I will be their voice. That family is suffering. They are hurting. And there is no cause, there's no justification for saying some of the things that were said out there in the media and social media. Just none. And I'm not going to tolerate it.
Lieutenant Gould, what do you think he means by he's not going to tolerate it? Do you think he means charges?
I don't know what he means, to be honest with you, Julie. I do take some exception at that. I'm not a critic of law enforcement. I've been in that situation. I can't tell you how many times I was second guessed. Appropriate so. That's what the media is supposed to create. Theories, alternate theories. That's what we do, lacking any firm facts of the case. And the facts of this case haven't changed in whatever it is, 14 or 15 days. We know we have a missing person, an abduction. I never bought into the kidnapping. I agree with Manuel. You have to investigate every lead, but we can't go down rabbit holes to think that this glove if I went to homeless encampments within 2 miles of my home, I would come up with different materials, backpacks, shoes, gloves. So look, I appreciate the sheriff. He is a very sincere person, and he might be the most experienced person in law enforcement. However, what he's not is a trained, seasoned public information officer. And public information officers, I studied media relations in the FBI Academy in Quantico 20 years ago. And the essence of it, one of the classes that I think about all the time is feeding the beast, how to feed the beast. Guess what? You are the beast, Julie.
I know.
And, I'm the beast. I hate to say that, but
I'm a beast that you love, Lieutenant, right?
You say that with all the love in the world, but
exactly.
We are the beast. We have
a lovely beast.
We have a voracious appetite for information. That's what we do now more than ever. Podcast, somebody's going to say she was abducted by aliens from Area 51. I get all that, and we got to take these things serious. And I'm an eternal optimist. I believe in miracles. But the fact is, an 84-year-old woman on life-supporting medication that was supposedly needed within the first 24 hours of her disappearance isn't here right now. There's no proof of life. So law enforcement has to remove the emotion. And I understand, but it's quite you have to look at the family. Look at Melody Buzzard. She was disappeared, and the mother killed her. We're finding out. Alex Murdoch, Scott and Tracy Peterson. So it just frustrates me a little bit. Great, they eliminated the family, but don't criticize the media and public because we're asking alternative theories in this, because all our theories at this point is as good as he quite correctly said. Our guess is as good as his.
Yeah, go ahead, Mike Gould. That's right, because everybody in the media is just doing their job, and everybody in the court of public opinion is allowed to have an opinion. Where it crosses the line is if someone does something that falls under the statute of harassment, something that, you know, would be codified as illegal. That's where, but to just have opinions, you're right. And to your point about feeding the beast, you know, it's funny, I gave a talk on this. I spoke to the Pennsylvania Sheriff's Association. It was my honor to do so, and I talked about how members of the media are just doing their job and just want to get information. And if you don't give them the narrative, guess what? Somebody in the court of public opinion is going to make it up. And people make it up. We've seen this happen in trials that we've covered here. Won't go into that, but it happens. And so the thing is, take control, as you said, Lieutenant. And look, I mean, did it take this many days to clear the family? I had hoped that he would have come out with that information sooner. Manuel, what do you think about that amount of time? So many days, and then he comes out and says they're clear after, you know, I have no idea what they've experienced in terms of public sentiment, but I've seen some of the things online that have been very hateful and cruel.
Well, I mean, unfortunately, you know, this is not a 5-minute thing where you take somebody's DNA and get a result back immediately, especially with a case like this. So it taking a few days to clear that family, you know, that's common. I'm glad that he did. I'm glad that he did clear their names because, like you said, Julie, on the social media platforms, they were attacking him and victimizing them and possibly putting them in danger. So I'm glad to see that this has been cleared up. But again, this case needs to go back to, you know, and my colleague's going to agree with me. We got to bring out the dogs. We got to expand this search. We got to go out between not 2 miles, but make it 5 or 6 miles. Remember, Julie, this community is a small community and the areas away from it are more desert. So we need to go out and look. Unfortunately, I don't believe she's alive. I hope she is, but I think we need to get those helicopters, get that Bluetooth back in there, and expand the range of this search area. And one thing I would love to see happen, since now the president's involved, why don't we bring in some of the helicopters from Fort Huachuca to assist this investigation? And that's what I would love to see.
Bring in the what? I couldn't hear the last part of what you said, Manuel.
The helicopters in from Fort Huachuca. There's the military base is literally about 25 minutes from our home, and they have this technology that can search and actually search the grounds.
Oh my gosh, that's a great idea. Boy, thank you for that. And I smiled because as soon as you said bring in the dogs, I saw Mike Gould smiling over there, our canine guy. We're going to talk more with you both. Stand by, get some more coffee, please. We got to hit a break. When we come back, we'll talk about whether this was all a burglary gone wrong. The sheriff addresses this, plus many other theories that are circulating in the court of public opinion. Plus,
what do you want to do? Do you want to maintain your plea or do you want to try?
Withdraw.
All right. You got it.
One's confessed hitman Henry Tenon heading to trial. His 2 other co-defendants will be joining him now, spotlighting the Microsoft executive murder case.
In 2021, Dee Warner vanished without a trace.
Dale Warner. He's accused of murdering his wife, Dee.
Rumors of a troubled marriage spread throughout this small community.
She had contemplated divorce several times.
Now, after years of searching for Dee Warner,
her remains are found on the couple's property, sealed inside a welded shut storage tank.
We're still going to fight to the end to see that she gets her justice.
The hidden murder of Dee Warner. Live coverage today on Court TV.
Every reference Nancy, a white female, 84 years of age, 5'2" medium build, Pineapple Blue, ring after 2,200 hours as of yesterday. Nancy has high blood pressure, pacemaker, and cardiac issues.
We're halfway through week number 3 in the search for Nancy Guthrie. Possible motives behind her abduction continue to trend, including claims of a botched burglary. Officials remaining mostly tight-lipped on key details. But Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos sat down with our Scripps News affiliate in Phoenix on Tuesday. He had this to say about one of the pressing rumors surrounding Nancy Guthrie's disappearance and her captor's alleged intentions.
One of the other rumors that's been going wild, and at least one report of it, is this has become a burglary gone wrong investigation. I know you have not mentioned that. You haven't talked about forced entry here. Do you have a theory on how this perp got in the house? Did Nancy open the door for a man in a mask with a gun?
First of all, the sheriff's theories don't really matter. Okay. It's those who are investigating this case, their theories, their thoughts, and they share that and work that together as a team. And all of those possibilities are something we all look at and consider. But it'd be very irresponsible of me to give out certain key pieces of this case so that the public can know.
So do you believe the abduction of Nancy Guthrie was a burglary gone wrong? Let's talk about it. Let's bring back in private investigator Manuel Gomez and retired police lieutenant Mike Gould. Lieutenant, I'll start with you. What do you think?
Right. No. So based on the facts that we know, and that's what we have to operate on, facts, not ambiguous, conflicting information. Your guess is as good as mine, as I said in the earlier segment. And I just want to put a fine point. It's not a criticism of law enforcement. Police executives sometimes get out of their lane. So if he's not highly trained in international public release of information, he should defer to the FBI, who have these trained people. So I want that to be clear. He's just out of his lane. He's trying to do what he can, but he's... regarding the randomness of a burglary, it's not random, that's for certain. Can it be a burglary gone wrong? Nighttime burglaries almost never happen randomly because you don't know what you're walking into. Are you walking into a house with 5 people, NFL football players that live there? So to walk into a house through the front door with a gun is almost virtually never happens. They may have left through the front door, but you don't go through your houses are highly fortified at the front door. The rest of our house, you can come around the back of my house, break a window, and pop in without anybody hearing you or knowing it. I don't think it's random. My instincts is there's some emotional relationship to the victim somehow, somewhere, whether it's through Savannah or the mother herself, but it's not definitely not random. It could be a burglary gone wrong, but you don't go in armed with a gun and kidnap somebody. It takes that from a burglary to a capital murder offense when she dies in their custody or in the commission of the crime.
Right. Manuel, to you next, please. Your thoughts on whether this was a burglary gone wrong.
Well, I agree with Mike. I don't believe it was a burglary gone wrong, and I can almost prove it to you that it's not. Fact one, there is no evidence of breaking and entry. At this time, it's been 17 days. No one, not the FBI, not the Pima police, anybody has said about a breaking and entry point into this house. If there was, I think they would have said it by now. It's 17 days, Julie. Second, like Mike said, I believe it's personal, okay? This guy went there. He was, not a professional. He's grabbing weeds to put up over a ring camera. A professional, a burglary, they would have taped it up. They would have ripped it off immediately. This guy knew these people. There's no doubt in my mind. And that this was something most likely because of, like you said earlier, reporters making statements, reporting on topics, and most likely pissed him off. And he took it out on the mother, unfortunately.
I want to talk about what you both think may have been the motivation here. Mike, let me go back to you. When you look at the facts as we know them today, this Wednesday morning, what do you think might have been behind this?
Right, Julie. So I'm hesitant to talk about predictions based on just hypothetical theories. I like to stick with the facts. The facts of this case has not changed one bit since day one, except for the release of the information that the family is excluded. So we're 17 days into it. If in fact she was on life-sustaining medication, she obviously hasn't received that. So to Manuel's point, to me, look, Two things are possible, only possible, in an abduction or kidnapping. It's either a rescue or a recovery. And at this point, unfortunately, and I pray I'm wrong, I'd love to hear the breaking news that she's been found. This is a recovery. The best recovery tool is dogs. Julie, just to make a point, in the spring, when the weather breaks up here, I'm going to be looking for a 25-year-old missing mother of four that's been missing for 25 years on the anniversary of 9/11. I have information from very seasoned investigators, and I'm optimistic 25 years later, I'm going to go upstate New York, and I'm determined to find the remains of this missing person. So my point is, this is not historical news. Unfortunately, there are several levels of our justice system. This woman didn't have the resources. She didn't have the President of the United States commenting on it, which is all good for the Guthrie family. They're blessed and they should be eternally grateful. But the average missing person, use the Melody Buzzard case, they didn't have these resources available to them. So I'm determined with my colleagues to go find Michelle Harris, upstate New York, as soon as the weather breaks here in New York.
That's awesome. Every good wish as you do, Mike. Manuel, let me go back to you. Would love your insights and professional opinion on what may have happened here.
Well, I think what happened is, like Mike said as well, you know, this is a personal matter. It wasn't for ransom base. This was personally, I feel, a matter of vindictiveness. This was a crime done out of anger by someone that knew them, okay? And the reason why I say that is, again, this person has not put out any demands, not put out any indications other than that crazy lunatic on TMZ that keeps sending them letters, which we all know is a scam artist. But the real perpetrator in this case has remained silent. And this case goes back to the fact that, one, this is an 84-year-old woman. She was a pillar of the community, a churchgoer. She had nothing to do with any type of maliciousness. It's a good mom. So he took it out, and the only thing I'm left to go with is because of the daughter's popularity, some topic, some political statement she made, something. That's what I believe in this case is. But like Mike said, we got to bring out the dogs. We got to expand the search. We got to take 100 soldiers from Fort Huachuca, line them up, and go grid by grid out there searching through. Bring these helicopters in, bring in that Bluetooth technology, and sweep not only a 2-mile radius, but a 5 to 10 mile radius.
Great points. Manuel Gomez, Mike Gould, thank you both so much for being on the show today. We'll continue following every update in the Nancy Guthrie case. In the meantime, we're going to turn to something else after this break. We have one confessed hitman changing his mind and saying he didn't do it. Defendant Henry Tenon now heading to trial. So what in the world is that going to look like? Plus,
after I got shot, I turned to my friend Landon and I asked him to hold my hand because I was scared.
Where were you when you asked him to hold your hand?
I was in the classroom floor.
What do you remember about being on the floor? Did you stay conscious or did you pass out at some point?
I passed out.
What was going through your head when this happened?
I don't remember.
Do you remember being afraid?
Yeah.
Emotional testimony from school shooting survivors in the murder trial for father Colin Gray. His son Colt Gray is the one you just saw get on that bus there with a semi-automatic rifle wrapped in cardboard. Apparently no one noticed this, and a massacre happened. We're breaking down the emotional testimony coming up on Opening Statements.
Henry Tenon pled guilty to murdering Jared Brightigan. Henry Tenon has admitted that he, in fact, was the shooter.
Welcome back. In our spotlight this morning, the once admitted hitman in the murder of Microsoft executive Joseph Brightigan got his wish, and now he's headed to trial. Henry Tenon confessed to killing Bridegan back in 2022 and agreed to testify against his two co-defendants, Bridegan's ex-wife, Shanna Gardner Fernandez, and her now estranged husband, Mario Fernandez Saldana. But Tenon went to court Tuesday and asked to withdraw his guilty plea and proceed to trial.
There was an agreement that was reached by you and the state of Florida in this case, correct?
Yes.
All right. And then your case, ever since I met you, has been kind of tracking along. And then on Friday, there was a motion filed indicating that you no longer want to enter a plea of guilty.
Correct.
All right. So my purpose in talking to you is just to determine whether you've had enough time with Ms. Schlax to discuss this matter with her.
Yes, we've had enough time.
Is this what you want to do?
Yes, it is.
Bridegan was shot to death outside of his car while his 2-year-old daughter was inside the car. They were on the way to get ice cream. She was in her car seat, and there was a tire in the middle of the roadway. And at the time, Bridegan and his ex-wife, Shanna, were in a bitter custody battle. Now, that was going on at the time. That was the backdrop. So now, with Henry Tenon withdrawing his guilty plea, what does that do to the case? We've got 3 co-defendants. Let's talk about it. Let's bring in our legal eagles, Franz Borghardt and Matt Timpanek. Good morning to you both. Let's talk about whether we're going to see these 3 tried all together. Franz, your thoughts?
Well, so I think that there's a good argument for severing, because if I'm one of the other co-defendants, I'm going to start pointing the finger and saying, he's the shooter, he's the killer. And when you start having adversarial defenses like that, there's a good system of case law that says that maybe they shouldn't be tried together. So, you know, I don't know if the prosecution's going to sever them. For now, I think they're together, and they will stay together until a court makes some kind of decision.
Matt, let me ask you this. We know this trial's happening in Florida. That's where you are based, where you practice law. Curious if you think the withdrawal of the guilty plea could affect getting a fair jury pool. This case has been highly publicized, not just in Florida, but all over the country, as you know. Matt, would love you to weigh in on that.
Definitely one of the things that's going to be asked during voir dire is, what kind of exposure do you have to this case? Because if they were watching court TV even a few minutes ago, they would see that this individual had previously confessed to this crime and now withdrawn the plea. If they have that information, that a potential juror would be susceptible to a preconceived notion about the case. The judge allowed him to withdraw his plea. Having done that on a case about a month ago, it is exceedingly difficult. It's not a guarantee. They basically asked the judge to use their discretion to do that. So to be able to get a fair jury, you're going to need probably 200 jurors to be able to get a panel of 6. Well, probably 8 with alternates, because it's a second-degree murder case. So it is going to be an issue, and it's something that's going to need to be flushed out during voir dire.
Right, Matt, thanks. I have a clip I want to play for both of you. This is with Jared Bridegan's widow, Kirsten Bridegan, a lovely woman. I was on a radio program once with her talking about the case. This is from a sit-down interview with Court TV, and she's talked about what it was like co-parenting with Shanna Gardner Fernandez.
The relationship between us and his ex-wife was not cordial. Our communications were always in writing because there was not mutual trust between the two households. Unfortunately, Liam and Abby, are kind of stuck in the middle of that. Jared and I tried so hard not to involve them, not to use them as messengers, not to talk poorly about their mother in front of them, and unfortunately that favor was not returned, and that was really hard on Jared.
So let's talk motivation here, Franz. As you know, the state of Florida's position is that this was motivated by selfishness and a want to end this custody battle and get custody of the kids. They're alleging that that is why Shanna Gardner was behind this. They're alleging that that is why her husband, Mario, contracted with Henry, the Tenon, to do the shooting. Tell me, Franz, even with the plea deal, blowing up, I don't know if this helps, Shanna Gardner or Mario Fernandez any. Your thoughts?
So I like the theory. I like the motive. It makes sense. I think universally everyone, whether they've gone through a divorce or knows someone who's gone through a divorce, knows that divorced spouses don't always act like the best of human beings. And it brings out the worst in people. And so is it possible that is the true motive? I like it. I like it as a motive. Now, what I will tell you is if I'm representing the other two co-defendants, I'm not really sure what this guy's defense is. He pled guilty. He admitted to what he admitted to. I'm not sure how he changes his defense, and does it become more adversarial for me? My defense would still be, he's the shooter. I don't know why he shot. He's the shooter. Mm-hmm. And I would, like a drum, he's the shooter. I didn't have anything to do with this. He's the shooter. Look, he even just pled guilty to it. He's the shooter. So that would be my tack for this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. You're right, Franz. What does he think he's going to get out of this? His deal was 15 to life for doing a murder, at least 15, maybe life, but there's that possibility, of a lesser sentence. Matt Timpanik, tell me, might prosecutors still try to sweeten this up, or do you think that ship has sailed?
At some point, you have to be like, well, this is the bottom. 15 years for a murder to hire is as low as a human being could go. At any point lower, it almost becomes insulting to be like, this person executed the victim in cold blood and we're going to give him manslaughter? No. 15 years is as good as they're going to get. Looking at this situation, if you're the prosecutors, you got to have more. You got to have something that you're giving 15 years to basically nail the other two co-defendants to the wall. But you need to have actually financial transactions. How were they paid? Was it in cash? Were there witnesses about the transaction? Because otherwise it could all just be hearsay. And like you said, the co-defendants could simply just blame the hitman as the shooter and be like, I don't know why. And all the evidence points to him. It's like, we're involved in a custody battle, but you still got to tie us to it. You have to prove that connection beyond a reasonable doubt. And we don't think you're going to be able to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, exactly. It is going to be interesting seeing what those three do, because you wonder if husband and wife have fallen out over this. You wonder if they're going to point the finger at each other to save themselves and point the finger at the shooter, as you both have said. Yeah, it's going to be like a big scramble for every man for himself. We'll leave it there for now and bring any more developments to you here on Court TV. Franz and Matt are coming with us. You do the same at home. Please, we're going to hit a break. When we come back, here's what's next.
I saw red. I was very mad. I hadn't even processed it as a kid. When I thought about who would do this, I was thinking maybe an angry parent, some kind of alumni that had a bad experience at the high school, terrorist attacks, anything. I did not think another student that had no reason to be in my school with a gun.
Oh, what a trial this is. How will the testimony from the shooting survivors tip the scales of justice for defendant Father Colin Gray?
This is the story of the Richins. Eric, a father of 3, met an untimely end, and Corey, his widow, wrote a children's book on grief.
She's also charged now with his murder.
He was faced with betrayal and terror.
I know her innocence.
Is their story a tragic romance?
Or a twisted tale of grief?
The truth will come out.
The Grief Author Murder Trial. Live coverage begins Monday morning, 8/7 Central on Court TV.
All kids got in the corner. And there was a kid that was in front of the door that decided to drop where he was, so I crawled over and grabbed his hands. I reached up and flicked off the light. And I went back over to the kids in the corner.
Did he ever come into your room?
He did not.
Could you hear the gun being fired?
I could.
An emotional day of testimony in the state's case against Father Colin Gray on Tuesday. Court set to start back up any moment in Georgia. Gray is facing a jury for second-degree murder in connection to his son's alleged actions in the 2024 shooting incident at Appalachia High School. On day 2, prosecutors took the jury back to that awful day, with survivors describing the moments that Colt Gray walked into that school, they say, armed with a semi-automatic rifle gifted to him by his dad.
When the first bang went off, I remember my teacher falling to the floor, and then Taylor in front of me. I remember seeing her fall down before I turned around and saw there was somebody at the door with a weapon, and then everybody else fell down to the floor and kind of ran closer to Miss Ryan and gathered against the wall. I remember Melody, she had blood all on her arm. I remember her blood was getting on the side of me because I was kind of laying on the side of her.
And take your time, Nautica.
I remember my teacher telling me to stay awake because I was really, really tired and I couldn't keep my body up. I remember Natalie laying on the floor saying that she was hit and crying with a big puddle of blood. And I remember just really I felt a really hot spot at the bottom of my leg, and then I reached down and noticed that I got hit, and then my friend Brittany took off her jacket and wrapped it around my leg, and then I passed out after that.
After I got shot, I turned to my friend Landon and I asked him to hold my hand because I was scared.
And did he hold your hand?
Yeah.
Do you remember where you went after they took you out of the classroom?
They put me in a helicopter and I flew to Grady.
Where were you shot?
In my leg.
So you went to Grady Hospital in Atlanta?
Yeah.
Do you remember how long you had to stay at Grady Hospital?
A couple weeks to a month.
And while you were there, did you have to have surgery?
Yes.
Was it more than one surgery?
Yes.
What did they do to treat you there at the school?
They put a tourniquet on me. I know they gave me pain medicine. They talked to me. The paramedic that was with me, they talked to me and they was letting it help me. It helped distract me.
As you were leaving the school, did you see anything?
I saw Colt Gray. He was on the floor with his hands behind his back.
Had you ever seen him before?
No.
Okay. Did you know who he was?
No.
Okay.
I remember thinking.
What did you think when you saw him?
I saw red. I was very mad. I hadn't even processed it as a kid. When I thought about who would do this, I was thinking maybe an angry parent, some kind of alumni that had a bad experience at the high school, terrorist attacks, anything. I did not think another student.
Did you say anything to him when you passed him?
Yes.
What did you say to him?
You I swear, I'm pretty sure I said, I swear I'm gonna kill you. I said a lot of curse words, and I was very angry, especially at the time, because I thought that they were going to have to amputate my hand.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they take you outside.
And I remember yelling at him that we were kids, because we were kids.
Oh, those poor kids. So let's talk about how their testimony may tip the scales of justice against this father who's on trial right now. Let's bring back in Matt Timpanic and Fonz Borgard. Matt, your thoughts, please.
It's very difficult to listen to that because any parent on the jury is going to be thinking that could easily be my kid sitting in that chair, recounting that same situation. So the involuntary manslaughter, I think, is a foregone conclusion. It's whether or not they get the second-degree murder charge. And under the theory of depraved indifference murder, meaning that the defendant's actions were so removed from what was lawfully required that although he did not pull the trigger, he created the environment for the defendant to actually do that, the shooter. And with that, you remember, he gave him a gun for his birthday, even though he knows he has mental illness, even though he knew he had a shrine to the Parkland shooter, Nicholas Cruz. So if you're hearing all that, plus that testimony, you're thinking on a jury, what could the defendant possibly think could happen if you were allowing that to happen? And I think they would be able to get close to to depraved indifference murder based on that testimony and based on the evidence I just presented. It just pulls at the heartstrings, and every parent, every grandparent, and every human being on the jury is going to be thinking that exact same thing.
Yeah, exactly, Matt. Let's take a listen to former teacher Suzanne Harris.
But as I was standing there, I wasn't standing there very long, but I heard a voice that said, "He's got a gun."
And that's just like a voice in your head,
kind of? In my head, yeah.
And what did you do when you kind of felt that happen?
I got cold chills from the top of my hair all the way down to the toes of my feet.
Survivors, Franz, how's this going to tip the scales for the jury in your view?
So Matt's dead right on the law. And I think the problem for some is, do I want to hold this guy accountable for the actual shooting, the second-degree murder, even though lawfully the elements seem to be there? And I think that where this tips the scale, Julie, is the emotional impact is going to rile up those jurors. And the jurors, the more they hear about what happened, how it happened, the more they're going to get angry at this father for putting these victims in this situation. And I think that's how it tips the scales. Generally, you have a juror or two that says, I don't know how I feel about making the dad who didn't do the shooting be responsible for the actual murder. I think that this testimony, this impact is pushing jurors away from not wanting to hold him responsible for that. He's going to get convicted of something. It's just, I think it's going to lean them more towards the top charge.
Mm-hmm. Yes. This dad, and the kid's mom, they were on notice. They were on notice. Yeah, I mean, how many mass shootings have we seen at schools in this country? And especially with the landmark case in Oakland County, Michigan, where we saw the prosecution of the Crumbly parents that was successfully done and showed that when you enable the behavior, you enable a shooting. The Crumblys provided their son with a firearm. They knew he was disturbed. They knew he was having mental health difficulties. And those prosecutors put their actions on trial in a court of law, and they were right to do that. And here, this is the same kind of thing. This child is so disturbed that they're medicating him. Matt Timpanic, the mother and father decided they would give him the mother's medication because his mental health was so bad. They didn't take him to a doctor. They thought, we'll just pop some pills in his mouth and hope that he'll be okay. But yet, let him have this firearm.
It's really, really, when you hear that, it's devastating. And as parents, the victim, everybody went to the school, it's like, how does any human being, much less a parent, even think this is a remotely a good idea? We often talk about we don't make the son pay for the sins of the father. But in this situation, I have to think the father's going to pay for the sins of the son.
You said that perfectly. We're going to go in there live in just a couple of minutes and watch the testimony together. Day 3 coming up in just a few moments on Court TV Live. Matt Timpanic, Franz Borghardt, thank you both so much. We'll hit a break. My friends, thank you for watching this episode of Opening Statements. That story, it's an emotional one. It's really, really hard to hear. Let's continue sending our love and our light to those victims and their families.